Hi. So I'm recording this to talk about my project for my nonprofit I want to start called My Cups of Grace. Um, if you've known me online for a long time, like my family knows because of since my early Gaia Online days, which was like March 2004. Um, So when I started on Gaia, I had like a cute little coffee house thread that was kind of like really super light, casual RP called A Cup of Grace. And since then, uh, around the internet, I've had other spaces called A Cup of Grace. Like for example, if you've joined my Discord, which is linked in my About Me bio here on YouTube, I have a link to my Discord community, which you can join. It is pretty Final Fantasy 14 heavy because that's like my main MMO right now, and I am a nerd and a gamer. So, uh, but and so I have a Cup of Grace there. I have a Cup of Grace on Facebook that was made like some years. It was like made back in 2020, and I think like my original goal, like I made that group for something else, and then I decided to turn it into something else, and then I made it a Cup of Grace. And when I made it a Cup of Grace, it was supposed to be aimed at it was supposed to be aimed at helping people who were mourning and dealing with grief. Because, like, I lost my dad like 10 years ago, and most of the time nowadays, when I talk about, if I say like my dad, I'm usually referring to like my heavenly father or like the source of all things because, I consider him like my really true father. But, um, like in Psalm 27, there's a verse in there that says, "When my mother and my father forsake me, then the Lord will take me up." And um, uh, I do feel like that's been something that I've had to live through quite more than I really would have liked to. And there have been quite a few times in life when it felt like neither one of them were really like there for me or support me through things. And with my mom, like when her and my dad had a lot of problems while I was in high school, like I ended up being the person who was helping and taking care of her, So I was like 14 and being the adult and safe person for my mom for a while. But yeah, so like, um, but my real dad, like, even though I do have like some personal issues, because I have like no illusions about who he was and like some of the things that's happened over his life, you know, and some of his, you know, different ways that things can be looked at that happened while we were growing up. And, I mean, if you talk to most people, they will say that, like, they will definitely credit my mom the most for us all being nice kids because she was probably, like, around the most. But, like, I don't know. But anyways, like, I still did love my dad. And, like, um, like a while before he passed, because, like, he had had a mini stroke, like, a couple of years before he passed away. And after the mini stroke, he had asked me like about the possibilities of him coming to stay and if I could take care of him. And at the time I had told him no because, you know, those were still the days that were early with Naaman and the autism. And when Naaman was young, like hair washing and haircuts were like traumas, and we had so much going on with like proper toilet usage, and there was so much going on then, you know. And I just felt like the kind of care my dad would have needed, because of like, because you know, like people who've had a stroke, like part of their body doesn't work the same anymore. Like it'll usually be one of the sides, but they'll have like a side of their face and a side of their body, and some of that's like redeveloping motor skills, and like, um, you know, and I just don't want to do that. But anyways, you know, I mean, he's still my dad, and it was devastating, and I would still say to this day that I have never been the same since then. I don't know. I've just never been the same as, I don't know, like, I mean, like, my mom got remarried, like, a long time before my dad passed away, you know? And I don't know, like, I feel like no matter who comes into my life, like, I would probably never treat somebody else like they're my real dad or something, you know? Because I'm just. But, anyways, and so yeah, so I made a cup of grace because on Facebook to be to help people, because you know grief is so hard. It's so hard, you know, and you can grieve over a pet, over losing a baby, maybe, you know. I mean, grief isn't only restricted to our immediate family. It can be anybody who's like super close to you. You know, sometimes through the events of life. They even sometimes life just takes people that we loved and enjoyed as friends away, you know, and not to hurt us, because they had to go and have a journey, you know, and so sometimes journeys take us away from each other, right? So, but yeah, I had a couple grades there. I sort of have one in the mothballs on Kiora, but I haven't really done a lot with that there yet. um, since there's so many spaces over there already that's dedicated to like everything that I would make it about. So once I get my nonprofit up and going, then I'll probably use it more later on down the line. So the name Cup of Grace is something that's really personal. And hold on, I'm gonna go get a mug and show you guys, because like, so like I've had uh my sister found a mug that said Cup of Grace and got it for me. So hold on. Well, or I don't know, maybe I'll just like get a picture and like post it on my community tab or something. But I have an actual white coffee mug and it says Cup of Grace. So but a while back, so I was like part of this light workers Discord. Um and I was talking to somebody there one day about like stuff I want to do, and cuz like I was getting the dream for this house, right? So like what I'm about to talk about, my cups of grace, actually is now not just the house anymore. It's like a whole thing. I have a whole dream of like everything that this should be. But it started with the idea of the house, which, by the way, if you want to know where I got the idea of the idea of the house was kind of partially inspired. There's like, if you've ever heard Elton John's Your Song, and uh, he says if he had the money, he'd buy a house where we both could live, you know? And I don't if you know my family, my parents had a really big house that was too much for them, and so they would rent out rooms. And they rented rooms to people for, I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 8 to 10 years ish. So, like, my mom and dad both had really big families. They came from boomer families. So, like, my mom has like five sisters through her mother, but she had a different biological father than her sisters. So she also had two sisters and a brother through her father, and all but like two or three of these people have lived with us for at one time or another, even if for only a brief little while. Um, like I can break down the family who've lived with us, and some of them lived with us for really extended amounts of time, some on and off. Uh, but I can tell you about probably most of them, right? But besides that, they also rented out rooms to boarders, and so like back in the day, my mom would like rent out a room, and it'd be like $200 a month, right? And so for that little bit they could like but they were always allowed to like hang out with us, use our kitchen, use the washer and dryer in the basement. um the upstairs had its own bathroom, you know. And or the people who there was a time when we were mostly upstairs. Some of us were like there was like 1 year we were like wanted to stay in the basement, and so they rented out some of the rooms on the main floor also. So, you know, those were happening times. And even people in our family knew a lot of our boarders who came to stay with us. And during those years, we've met so many different people that came from all sorts of different walks of life. We had men and women, and they came from different nationalities. I mean, we had a guy who was from Turkey who played soccer, and we had like this one lady who was like Korean and always just made a lot of udon noodles. And um you know, we've had people who were super skinny and people who were super heavy, and then this one lady, I forget her name, um but she was one time told me and my one aunt about how like at one time she had a couple run-ins with the mob and some of her experiences with that. And like um or like when I was between the ages of like 6 and 8, we lived in Madison Heights, and there was a girl down the street who used to babysit us, and then she ended up coming and renting a room from us for a little while as well. And then like when I was like in junior high, one of my cousins came to live with us for like almost a year. um and uh around the same time she was staying there, this other girl from the local high school who was having a troubled home situation came and stayed with us for a bit. And then she ended up moving on, you know, and going back home after some time. But after she left, then the school counselor had like reached out to my parents about them being able to take in like these other, maybe the possibilities of taking in other kids who need a safe place to go. And um you know, uh and I will just say, like, as unusual as an growing up experience that could be, all these different strangers coming in and out of our life, I really feel like you know, our house became like, yeah, at like $200 a month is pretty cheap to get by for rent anywhere, you know, even if you are only having a room. Because if you were to get like, we were in Oak Park just outside of Ferndale, but if you were to go to Ferndale and get a whole upstairs flat, that's like the upstairs part, that's like studio or one bedroom, you're probably gonna, for a studio, you're gonna pay a 500 minimum. If it has a bedroom or 2 bedrooms, you're probably going to pay 750 to 800, and that was like back in the 90s. You imagine how much that will cost now? Like, rents are really through the roof right now. So like, it was a lot. And I think that did something really good for people. And um that kind of communal living, I feel, is like really positive. Like, sometimes even looking back, like when I first moved back to Michigan after living in California for a year, and I went to stay with my mom, who was at the time renting a house in Royal Oak. And so, my ex-boyfriend, who at the time when he first came here, because he was originally from California, and so when he came, he had built like a whole bunch of PCs, and we had like this little LAN in the basement, and so like we would all like play together. And if you ever talk to my youngest brother, me and him both share like tons of like memories from all the stuff we all used to do at that house. There was just something. Our life was never perfect, and my dad wasn't always great, and then when my dad wasn't great, my mom would work a lot, so she wasn't always around. But despite all those things, like growing up with all those people there was a really rewarding experience. And I'd like to give other people a place to call home, because like I've always been that person who is very unassuming and always often overlooked. Like, not that people don't like me, but um, I'm probably too serious for my own good. I'm really serious. I'm very eccentric. Just like, I seem pretty calm right now while I'm talking on camera, but sometimes I'm like really, really hyper, and sometimes I just can't stop talking. I'm very loquacious, and if I'm hyper and in the mood to talk about something that I feel really passionate about, I probably talk for like a couple hours and just not stop talking. So, I mean, it's just, you know, I'm a chatterbox. I've always been like that. So, for a while, I was quieter than normal because, I was going through a dark night of the soul times, and I just got quiet and thinking about things and and praying and reading a lot. Some writing, you know. But uh, I just really feel like I know, like, I'm not the only one. I am not the only person who experiences the kind of stuff I go through. With feeling like an outsider and feeling like you can't relate to anybody, or feeling like you just feel like a weirdo to so many people. And everybody has, not that people don't like you, but they always have somebody that they'd rather spend time with, and they can make time for like all sorts of stuff, but when it comes to you got nobody to spend time with, and you're just alone and by yourself. And I just feel for these other people, because despite the things I go through and some of my emotional instability problems, like, I'm a great person. Like, I do have a bad temper sometimes, and I know I get out of hand. I can get out of hand very easily. I have a lot of fire in my chart. So, but like I still have a lot of great attributes. I mean, that's why I said like most people do like me. It's just they have other people that are more fun to hang out with, and or they, I just get too deep for people, and that's just not what they want. So, but I believe that there are a lot of other people out there who are like me, and I want to find the people who are like the outcasts and the brokenhearted and the people who need a people. So I want to make the cup of grace, because like uh there was a verse. In Isaiah 61:1, this says, "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the meek, and he has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, and to proclaim liberty to the captives, and opening the prisons to them that are bound." And once Jesus said that in the temple because he was going to die for people. And I don't think, at least that I know of, or that he hasn't told me that I'm meant to like die for people, but I do believe that I'd like to be, allow the Lord to use me to help people, because like if you have a personality disorder, you're still a person. It's a personality disorder. Like, I mean, depending on who you talk to, they might act like it's worse than cancer. But it's like, really, if you have a personality disorder, which you really have, is like trauma and childhood neglect and abuse, wounds. You have things that have happened to you that you've never been able to get over. And those things that happen to you are not your fault. They probably happened to you before you were even old enough to speak up for yourself, you know? And so, because of these things that have happened to you, now you can't relate to people the way that other people, and you watch people and you wonder to yourself, what is it like to feel normal? What is it like to have people like you? What is it like to have friends? What is it like to go hang out with other people? And I want to create the Kundalini house that is to go find these broken and left behind people, because you matter. You matter too. And you don't have to be like everybody else. It's okay to be different. Being different doesn't mean that you think you're better than everybody. And being different doesn't mean that you're also broken and worse than everybody. You might be broken, but you know what? Sometimes we have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. And if you're hurting and going through a lot of crap in your life that makes you feel like you're not sure if you want to unalive yourself, if you have times where you feel like you don't know if you can make it, like, what's the point of life? What are you doing here? Like, what is it all for? Like, what it must feel like to matter to somebody, because you can't possibly imagine what that feels like. Then that's for you. The cups of grace are for you, because you matter. You do. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you don't. You don't have to be like everybody. It's okay to be different. We don't all have to be the same. What's the point of having billions of people on earth for them all act and look like they're the same fucking person, you know? We're different people. We're all going to bring different things to the table. We have different talents and different things that we contribute, you know. And if you look in the greater spiritual collectives, we all have roles to play. Like, even if you look at like the body of Christ, a body is made up of lots of different organs and different systems that help that body to function. And when one part of the body is not able to function properly, the rest of the body is going to have to compensate for that part of the body. So, like, I recently have diabetes, so now that's something I have to watch. And if my diabetes gets out of control, it makes me tired and I need to sleep. And this prevents me from doing literally everything, even though I'm not physically disabled. You know what I mean? So, like, and, but like, if I lost my hand, now my other hand has to do it all. And so it's like, your liver can't do the job of your heart. Like, if you try to take somebody's liver and put it in place of the heart is the has to pump and clean your blood for you, and your kidneys are helping your blood cells. But your kidneys also affect a lot of things in your body as well. Like, your feet can be like, wow, watch this, we can, Or your hands could be like, hey, feet, watch this. We can walk on our hands. We don't have to walk on our feet. But your hands aren't made for walking, so you're probably not going to be able to do that on a sustained basis. You can do it for a little while as a novelty, but at the end of the day, you're going, you know what I mean? Like, the hands have so many jobs and things they do. They don't need to be the feet. The feet are the feet. The feet are the feet because they have nerves that connect to every organ of your body. And that's what keeps you grounded. So it's like, that's why, like, if you ever go for a walk on the beach, a walk on the grass after it's freshly rained, it's going to feel a certain way because your nerves are like touching the earth, you know? And every part of your body is simultaneously touching the earth. And now you've been grounded because you walked barefoot outside, you know? So it's just saying that, like, you know, just because you're not like everybody else, you fit in this body. And you might not be the heart, you may not be the feet or the hands, you know, but there's lots of things that go on in a body that are just as important and matter just as much. Because, you know, if you, you know, everything in the body affects everything else. So nothing is more important, you know. I mean, sure, you can live without a hand, but you're not going to live without your heart or your mind. But you're, you know, you can have impairments and be okay. And if that happens, you know, then other parts of the body compensate extra for it. And who's to say that if you hang in there and go through a transformation, you know, leave behind the you that you were, embrace the you that you're trying to be right now. You know, every day we have the choice to wake up and decide, this is who I want to show up as to the world. Like, I don't love the me that I've been, and I don't know how to be happy as I am, but I really want to be happy. You know, I want to find joy again. I'm tired of being depressed. I'm not going to give up, and I'm not going to let this depression rob me, because I'm a child of the Most High God. You know, He didn't anoint me and choose me and send me here so that I can kill myself because I'm just not feeling good right now. So, and the cups of grace is here for all of you who are in that place where you feel like you just need somebody to hug you and somebody to care. Because let's face it, a lot of the people in the world these days, especially if you're on social media, make you feel like nobody gives a crap about anybody really, unless they think they're gonna get money out of it. So, you know, so I'm probably gonna make a series of other videos to talk about my plan for the cup of grace, because it's really a lot involved. And I've been using Microsoft Clipchamp, which only allows me to record in 30-minute chunks. And probably if I upload them to YouTube, most people are not going to listen for more than 30 minutes anyway. So, um, but gonna have a series coming about the cups of grace and like what it is and what I want it to be. That way I have like an original declaration of like what I wanted to do. And maybe years from now, when my cup of grace does exist, I'll be able to come back and say, oh, I remember when I made this, and then look where we've come. You know, it all started as like a humble little video with me just being in a little mobile home park in like some random Detroit suburb. So